Leora lifted her gaze to him. The moment their eyes met, the world narrowed to Damien's intense black stare. Her vision blurred slightly. A scorching heat shot through her neck and face. Fear and desire collided in her chest. Her mind screamed monster, dragging up the traumas she carried, but her body pulled in the opposite direction. A desperate, involuntary draw toward him. The conflict tore through her. Romantic attraction versus trauma memory. A phantom sensation brushed her collarbone, as though his hands were ghosting across her skin, prickling into a sharp, static-like warmth she couldn't hide. She gripped the wall, hoping the terror in her eyes masked the illicit reaction rising in her chest. Before Damien could move, or she could process the phantom touch, Ryder stepped between them. A dark, familiar shield. Leora's internal heat twisted instantly into sharp embarrassment and alarm. She wanted to sink into the stone beneath her feet. Ryder's presence was a clear external challenge. He had seen it, or at least suspected. She didn't dare meet his gaze. The muted noise from the training yard felt unbearable, amplifying the scrutiny. Ryder leaned close, voice low and tense. "You okay? You look off." Damien passed, leaving behind the lingering scent of dark pine, and disappeared down the corridor. The moment his presence receded, Leora's panic erupted. The removal of his proximity was physical, like losing air. Her chest constricted, pain stabbed through her ribcage, a terrifying new internal conflict. Her body seemed to collapse without him. She stumbled from the wall, reaching instinctively toward where he had gone, hating the reflex the instant it happened. Ryder saw her fall, shouting her name, but all Leora registered was the rush of blood in her ears and the cold shock through her limbs. The pain spiked. Rising panic overwhelmed her control. She hit her knees, vision tunneling as the concrete floor rushed up. Humiliation gave way to helplessness. Her body had betrayed her, in front of a witness. Ryder panicked. "Leora!" But she barely heard him. Then, suddenly, the chest pain eased. The rushing in her ears vanished. The moment Damien froze mid-step 60 feet away, turning back toward her, relief surged through her like a tidal wave. His distant presence alone stabilized her. She barely had time to process the helplessness before she felt the effect on Damien. He spun sharply, jaw clenched, eyes flashing with wolf-light. His violent reaction transformed the air, shifting her personal panic into something shared. Dangerous. Forbidden. The low vibration of his growl traveled through the floor, distress not entirely his own. His pupils dilated as her gasp cut the corridor's silence. Their bond synchronized. He took a predatory step toward her, each crunch of his boots echoing in the frozen hallway. "What's happening to you?" he growled. Ryder was immediately at her side, a hand on her elbow, but Leora pushed herself up. Refusing to meet Damien's stare, the feeling of safety he once brought had curdled into bitter, defensive panic. She scrambled for control. "Just dizzy," she said. "Dehydration." The lie was sharp, adrenaline-fueled. Ryder's face, etched with suspicion, flickered between her chest and Damien. He noticed more than her words. Her heartbeat was synced with Damien's steps. Cold air rushed from her lungs, outward signs of her inner turmoil. "You reacted when he walked away," Ryder said quietly. Not a question. A fact. It stole what little footing she had left. Leora flinched, pulling her gaze from Damien to fix fiercely on Ryder. Defensive panic spiked, trying to override the raw, chilling fear of what her body had betrayed. Ryder's hands gripped her shoulders gently, his voice lowering. The intimacy of the gesture magnified her fear. He wasn't a guard, he wasn't a friend in this moment. He saw the truth she feared. This was not normal. His eyes scanned her face, then lingered on the faint burn where Damien had touched her. He whispered, voice low but intense. "Leora, this isn't normal. What did he do to you?" The words froze her blood. This wasn't about weakness, or dizziness, or shame. It was about agency. Ryder had named it out loud, wolf-bonded behavior. The sharp heat on her skin flared again, an unwanted reminder of the connection she couldn't control. She was bound, and now someone else knew. Chapter 12. Secrets in Scars and Voices in the Dark. Leora rolled back the thick wool cuff of her sleeve, exposing the crescent-shaped scar above her inner elbow. Candlelight caught the ridged, white line, making it stark against her skin. She barely had time to register her own hesitation before Alaric stepped closer, and froze. His breath hitched, soft, involuntary. It was exactly the reaction she had hoped for, and feared. The intensity in his eyes sent a jolt through her, shifting her inner state from curiosity to sharp, cold unease. She wanted answers, yet feared the truth he might see. Alaric stared at the small scar as if it were written in a language only he could read. The candle flame flickered violently for a second, though no draft disturbed it. His voice dropped to a low whisper. "I hoped I was wrong." He didn't look at her, only at the mark. Slowly, tentatively, Alaric lifted his hand, hovering it above her scar. The motion was painfully delicate, reverent, almost, as if the air itself might shatter under his touch. Leora's chest tightened. Fear pricked through her, leaving her suddenly vulnerable. She flinched, pulling her arm back slightly, unsure whether his intent was medical, prophetic, or something else entirely. The air between them seemed to pulse. She felt a subtle pressure beneath her skin and a faint, low hum, like distant chanting. "May I?" he whispered, strained and thin. Leora didn't respond, yet Alaric didn't wait for permission. He quickly drew his hand back, shoulders slumping under the weight of knowledge. He stepped away, rubbing his forehead, pacing once. The hesitation sent a sharp spike of suspicion through her. He was holding back something important. The scent of aged paper and leather thickened around them. Finally, his voice fell into the quiet library, resonant and low. "This is older than your memories." Leora blinked, confused. "Older? It's my scar." Alaric ignored her. Instead, he moved toward the center table, piled high with brittle scrolls and leather-bound tomes. He flipped a massive volume open to a torn page, revealing a drawing of a child marked with a crescent identical to hers. The edges of the page were ragged, clearly torn deliberately. Someone had hidden this knowledge. Alaric traced the line of the scar in the drawing with his finger. "The surviving child always bears the mark," he murmured. A cold jolt shot through Leora, not tied to prophecy or magic, but deep in her mind. She instinctively touched her scar and winced as a sudden, stabbing pain erupted, not on her skin, but at the back of her head. Dread churned into nausea. A fragment of memory surged. Darkness, a man shouting, the metallic taste of blood on her tongue. She stumbled back from the table. The tome slipped from her hands, crashing to the stone floor. Alaric didn't look down. His gaze remained locked on her, pale with sudden, stark recognition. He gripped the table for support, looking every bit as disoriented and protective as Damien had when she collapsed in the training yard. His words, "the surviving child," contradicted everything Marcus had told her over the years. The candle on the desk flickered violently in response to the emotional surge, plunging the library into near darkness, before flaring weakly back. Leora's voice was barely audible. "Surviving what?" She fled the library, the fear still clinging to her. She wanted the comforting lies Marcus had always offered, the familiar version of her past. She lifted her hand to knock on the guest house door, but before she could, it swung open. Marcus stood there, composed, his calm, controlled gaze unnervingly timed. "Leora," he said smoothly, claiming he had heard her footsteps. The compound was large. Her steps had been quick. The sudden chill in the hallway made her question the timing. Did he know she would come? "You're shaking," Marcus observed. His hand guided her inside, pressing gently, but firmly, at her spine. The touch was practiced, calculated, less comfort, more ownership. "You shouldn't talk to Alaric alone." He led her to the couch and sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder, forming a unit. Marcus spoke immediately, recounting her childhood with confident familiarity, summer days at the lake, the day she fell from the oak tree. "The scar," he said smoothly, "from an accident with a branch. You slipped trying to save a bird's nest." His certainty was absolute, but it clashed violently with the fragment of memory she had just experienced. Leora subtly shifted on the couch, trying to create space, trying to reconcile his account with her visceral recollection. Marcus reacted instantly. He grabbed her wrist before she could move away. The sudden pressure made the scar beneath her sleeve react. A faint warmth bloomed under her skin. Marcus's eyes widened for a fraction of a second as he noticed. He dropped her wrist abruptly. Like the touch had burned him, the truth hit Leora hard. Marcus was not her protector. He was a cage. She stepped back, covering her scar, her fear crystallizing into quiet defiance. Marcus's words tried to reclaim control. "You're remembering wrong." Leora's pulse pounded against her palm, pressing into the crescent mark. For the first time, she truly saw the predator behind the practiced kindness. "Maybe I'm finally remembering right," she said, her voice flat. unflinching. Without waiting for his response, Leora moved toward the door. Her feet carried her steadily, refusing to betray the shaking certainty building inside her. Marcus called after her, calm but sharp. "Leora, we haven't finished our talk about your accident." She didn't pause, he didn't follow. He waited, controlled, unmoving. Stepping into the night, the cold air hit her like water, stripping away the warmth of the controlled house. She didn't look back. Her voice trembled in the darkness, the only honest sound she could make. Why does nothing you say feel real anymore? Chapter 13. The Wolf Who Holds Her Together. The woods felt like a release after Marcus's suffocating control, but the relief never quite came. She was mid-stride, moving away from the guest house when a sound shattered the fragile calm. Not a loud crack, but the unmistakable snap of wood under unnatural weight. Close, behind her, Leora froze instantly, her muscles locked, turning her body to cold, rigid marble. Fear surged through her like metal, sharp. Immediate, survival screamed at her to run, but her trauma-induced freeze kept her rooted. A cold wind sliced across her neck like a warning blade. The patrol perimeter had been breached, and she couldn't move. Then came the growl. Low, guttural, terrifying. Move. Her mind screamed, but her body refused. One step forward, then nothing. Shame and panic coiled through her chest. Her body betrayed her survival instinct. Breathing shortened. Vision narrowed. Freeze. She focused on the empty path ahead, trying to break the paralysis when another sound reached her. Closer. Controlled. Inhumanly steady footsteps. Her heartbeat pounded in response, loud and insistent. Before panic could fully consume her, he appeared. Damien stepped from the pines, no more than 20 feet away. He was contradiction made flesh, alpha, wolf, power, and yet a shield. Relief and shame collided inside her. His chest rose with controlled wolf energy, marking him as the one tracking the rogue and her. She wanted to resist relying on him, yet instinct pulled her toward him anyway. His eyes caught the moonlight glowing faintly the wolf barely contained, but it was his scent. Pine. Smoke. Heat that struck her hardest, grounding her. A tether in the chaos. He said nothing. He didn't waste time asking questions. He simply took control of the moment. Stepping closer, he inhaled deliberately, forcing her breath into rhythm with his own. Her racing pulse began to sync with his steady, heavy thrum. The tremor in her chest eased, just slightly, as she inhaled the heat and scent radiating from him. Her voice, breathy and uncertain, managed only one question. Why does that help? There was barely time to process the fragile calm before danger struck. A rogue leapt from the brush, gray muscle, snarling teeth, aimed directly at her. Panic surged, freezing her again. Before she could move, Damien shoved her back, placing himself between her and the threat. The ground seemed to vibrate beneath him as his low growl rolled through the air, snapping the rogue's attention to him. Bark splintered. Dirt flew. The force of his protective move threw her off balance. She stumbled backward, heels sinking into soft earth. Before she hit the ground, Damien caught her. His arms locked around her. Panic dissolved into a jolt of unwanted, overwhelming safety. She was in the arms of the man she feared most, and yet she felt perfectly protected. Her body reacted instantly. Heat blossomed beneath her skin where his forearm pressed against her waist. She gripped his jacket reflexively, knuckles white, and the warmth of his chest through the fabric struck her like a revelation. Damien didn't release her. He shifted slightly, pulling off his black fleece and draping it over her shoulders. The weight brought steadying warmth, chasing away the remnants of panic. His scent, heat, authority, was a dangerous comfort, claiming her in a way her mind could not process. His fingers brushed her collarbone as he adjusted the collar, and weakness swept through her knees. The warmth was both physical and symbolic. The wolf claiming space, the alpha providing safety. Her body steadied, but shame followed immediately. She hadn't asked for this protection. She had surrendered to it, instinctively. Her forehead fell against his chest, an involuntary surrender to the only safe point in the forest. A tiny electric jolt sparked where her skin touched his, and Damien inhaled sharply, pressing closer, his heartbeat thumping against her cheek. The rogue circled, but Damien's focus never left the small weight of her forehead against his chest. The wolf inside him screamed to claim and protect, but he fought to maintain control. He tightened his grip on her shoulders, fingers trembling beneath the jacket. Her frantic breathing slowed as it synced with his own. And in that moment, he realized something. Holding her calmed the wolf too. The primal energy surging through him began to settle, the sensation both intoxicating and terrifying. Her scent, wildflowers, fear wrapped around him, chaotic and grounding all at once. Movement at the edge of his vision dragged his attention back. As he adjusted the jacket, his palm brushed her skin, and he glimpsed her scar glowing faintly beneath his hand. A thin, pale line, flickering in response to his touch. The mate mark. The realization struck him like ice. Her body was responding to him, biologically accepting him as a mate, even as her mind resisted. He yanked his hand back as if burned, creating sudden space between them. Leora shivered. The heat vanished too quickly. He stepped back, rubbing his face, trying to tear himself free of the suffocating, desperate pull. The wolf inside him howled in mournful agony, demanding closeness, while Damien forced reason to the surface. Then a soft, desperate whisper reached him. "Don't go." The words crossed the distance, slicing through the dread. She lifted her hand toward his chest, hesitant, raw. Her wide, fearful eyes mirrored the same aching longing twisting in his gut. Conflict tore through him. The wolf demanded closeness. Reason demanded restraint. The distance between them throbbed, measured in inches between skin and skin. This time he didn't step back. Heat pulsed between their palms, a fragile, dangerous bridge. Damien forced himself to hold the line, his voice rough with restraint. "Why you?" No answer came. Only the overwhelming conviction of the wolf's heartbeat inside his chest. His pulse doubled, two rhythms converging into a single shattering moment. Chapter 14. The witnesses lie in opposite directions. Ryder kept his pace steady, forcing his body to stay calm, even as unease crept beneath the surface. The moment they left the main thoroughfare, his careful neutrality fractured. Every shadow caught his eye, every shuttered window, every slick alleyway. The lower pack housing was known for fear, secrets, and violence, the poorest, most desperate territory. His stomach tightened. Guiding Leora here put him in direct conflict with elder orders, and he had to hide it. Rain hammered the corrugated rooftops with metallic insistence, amplifying the exposure, the vulnerability of the space around them. "Why are you acting like someone's watching us?" Leora's voice cut through the rain behind him, low, sharp. Ryder stopped in front of a peeling shack door, its frame barely holding against the storm. Before he could knock, a narrow gap opened. An elderly wolf peered out, her eyes not on Ryder, but scanning anxiously past him, down the alley. His irritation at the delay shifted instantly to concern. The raw terror on her face was unmistakable. She recognized Leora in the dim light and flinched. The door pulled tighter. Warm, herbal smoke seeped through the crack, clashing with the cold scent of rain. Her voice, thin and cautious, whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." Ryder leaned closer, cutting off Leora's view of the woman's face so he could hear her clearly. The elder muttered about Damien's curse. Behind him, Leora's breath hitched, a small, choked gasp. Ryder felt it then. A spike of cold, jealous tension he hadn't invited. The elder's words implied a connection Leora couldn't deny. Ryder's thoughts bristled. She was emotionally tied to Damien. He lowered his voice, carefully measured, probing. "Did he do something to you?" Ryder's gaze never left Leora, waiting for denial, but the elder spoke before she could answer. Her voice was reedy, laced with guilt and urgency. She described what she saw. Damien, carrying a child, bleeding, crying. The tremor in her words, fear and relief entwined, sent a shiver through Ryder. He knew the elder was risking consequences to tell the truth. "That's enough, elder." Ryder's sharp voice cut through the narrow alley. He stepped forward, deliberately closing the space, cutting her off mid-sentence. Leora, leaning toward the door with fragile hope, recoiled. Suspicion flared. Ryder's actions reflected his role. Controlling the narrative, preventing the pack from hearing anything that contradicted the approved account. The elder's fearful glance confirmed it. He wasn't a protector. He was a handler. Rowan's small apartment reeked of cigarette smoke. Thick, bitter, a stark contrast to the clean, wet air outside. Leora stepped in. Curiosity pricked at her, but dread replaced it quickly. Rowan stood by a cracked window, refusing to meet her gaze. His attention fixed on the street below, older than Ryder. Brittle, wary. He radiated distance. She needed answers, but he clearly didn't want to provide them. "You shouldn't dig this up," he muttered to the glass, voice low, bitter. The warning ignited determination in Leora. The elder downstairs had given her a fragment of hope. Rowan offered avoidance. She stepped forward, voice trembling but firm. "Tell me." It wasn't a request, it was an order, driven by her urgent need for truth. Rowan's hand crushed the cigarette against the windowsill, the brittle snap echoing in the tight space. His voice came low, hoarse, words that seemed to cost him physically. "I saw Damien over your father's body, and he fled into the woods after." Leora froze, struck by the contradiction. The elder had seen a child carried safely. Rowan saw Damien fleeing, unsure if it was a body or a child. Two witnesses, opposite truths, yet both insisted Damien was central. She staggered against the wall, heels catching a loose floorboard. They can't both be lying. Can they? Rowan leaned closer, whispering like a guilty confession. He fled with a child, or a body. I don't know which. The uncertainty shattered any stable footing Leora had. The flickering lighter in his trembling hand became the only point she could focus on. Her breath caught. The room tilted. Gripping the edge of the table, chest heaving, her terror spiraled. A flash of memory erupted. The smell of pine. A red light. A scream not present, but echoing inside her. Leora forced the words past her lips. But I didn't see any child. Ryder reacted immediately, grabbing her arm too quickly, his touch sharp, urgent. The sudden cold pressure transformed her terror into suspicion. His fear betrayed his motive. This was no longer about protecting her. It was about controlling the secret Rowan had exposed. His voice cracked under panic. "Leora, stop. Don't go there." It was too late. Leora clutched her head as the fragmented memory tore through her consciousness. The flash of pine, the red light, the desperate, impossible scream, all pointed to one terrifying truth, and she recognized it, shivering with horror. That was me. Chapter 15. The Night He Saved Me and Damned Me. Leora stumbled down the cold, echoing hallway, the weight of years spent in lies pressing down on her. She pressed her palm against the rough stone wall, letting the chill ground her in a present that felt almost unreal. Conflicting testimonies, Rowan's and the elders, had begun to unravel her mind. Her thoughts twisted between rising fragments of memory and the comforting truths Marcus had fed her. The silver pendant at her throat suddenly warmed, pulsing faintly with white light, as if reacting to her panic. A small, sharp voice echoed inside her mind. Why do I hear that scream again? The cold of the stone sank deeper into her bones. She clutched her head as the oracle's voice overlaid itself, familiar and low, yet layered with something younger, tinged with rain and ozone. Panic surged. Raw. Uncontrollable. Two threads of memory pressed at her mind at once, battling for clarity. The oracle whispered, clear and ancient, the child saved by the wolf. Before Leora could respond, a shadow fell over her. Damien was there. Too fast, too close. A solid wall against her spiraling dread. He gripped her arms firmly, bruising, yet stabilizing her. Relief washed over her, and with it a fresh, agonizing conflict. The very presence that steadied her physically also threatened to shatter her emotionally. She knew he was connected to the child from her memory. Damien's hands trembled. His chest rose and fell rapidly. His breath brushed her forehead. He didn't ask what had frightened her. He asked what she saw. Leora. Look at me. What do you remember? She struggled against his grip, torn between the need for support and the terror of what was surfacing. Her vision flickered, between him in the hallway and him in the forest. Relief collapsed back into panic. A metallic, blood-tinged scent filled her senses. For a brief moment she saw him crouched over her father, claws bloody. Her voice came out small, fragile. Were you there? The hallway shifted. Gone. Replaced by the wet, black forest. She saw him crouched over her father, blood staining his hands and his shoulders. Horror obliterated the panic. Now the struggle was between this memory and the mate bond pulling her toward him. She felt the phantom crunch of leaves under invisible feet. The only sound she could force from herself was trembling, desperate. Did you kill him? Damien didn't answer. Not with words. He flinched, his jaw tightened, his eyes closed for a moment. His posture, bowed, shuddering, spoke louder than anything he could have said. Horror turned to betrayal. Reaching out, she touched his wrist. His pulse was frantic. Say something, she whispered, tears thick in her voice. The surge of his inner wolf answered her. Damien's grip tightened instinctively. His eyes flashed gold, not in aggression, but in desperate protection. The wave of betrayal softened under the raw, animal need to comfort her. His hands radiated heat, anchoring her to the present. He spoke low, raw. Confession bled through his words. "I can't lose you to this. Not like this." The gold in his eyes flared. Her vision shifted. She was a child again, small, crouched beneath the protective weight of a massive wolf. The horror of the adult memory collided with this immediate truth. She realized the night had been both terrifying and protective. This wasn't the same night? She whispered. The memory aligned. Damien had saved her as a child, shielding her from harm. Her adult self saw the man who had gripped her arms in the hall. Her child self felt the protective warmth of fur. The missing piece clicked. Painfully. You carried me, she admitted, her voice small, cracked. Damien released her arms but couldn't step away. The intensity of restraint collapsed into sinking despair. His conflict was clear. He wanted to comfort her, yet believed he didn't deserve to. He confessed, voice trembling, "I saved you. And because I did, someone died." The truth settled heavily between them. Damien's guilt ran deeper than the murder itself. He dragged a hand over his face, trying to convey the full, complicated burden he carried. Blame for failing to stop the killer warred with his need to protect her from the full horror. Desperation forced the words out. "If I had been faster, your father would still be alive." His voice, self-blaming raw, amplified her anguish. She stepped back, clutching her pendant. The emotional pivot was immediate. From mate pull to numb disbelief, her mind rejected contradiction in favor of survival. The pendant pulsed violently, responding to psychic stress. White light flooded the hall, harsh, sterile. She felt herself pulled together physically by the bond, yet torn apart emotionally by the truth. "Why can't I remember the rest?" she whispered. The prophetic energy faded, leaving her hollow. She reached out, touched Damien's cheek, froze. The prophecy had drawn them together. The truth stood between them. She saw both Damiens, the bloodied man over her father and the massive wolf shielding her child self. Reality wasn't either. It was both. Her voice trembled. Final. It was you. Chapter 16. The walls know his name. The isolation chamber felt suffocating. Its silence was unbearably loud. Damien had spent the past hour pacing, fighting the urge to go to her. He pressed his palm against the stone wall. It gave slightly under his fingers. Stone dust trickled down onto his boots, a stark reminder of the raw power surging through him. Unbidden, uncontrollable. His mind snapped away from the detached irritation of pack politics into something hotter, a burning, visceral fear of his own instability. The wolf inside him stirred, silent, insistent. Mine. Not spoken aloud, but whispered in the deepest recesses of his mind. The bond was strong now. Too strong. It pulled at him with physical insistence he could no longer ignore. Even her faint heartbeat seemed to echo alongside his, sinking subtly with the low growl vibrating beneath his chest. He gripped the bed frame, forcing himself to stay still. The heavy wood bit into his palms. Every heartbeat, every breath. A battle against the instinct, demanding proximity. When her name whispered inside his skull, the bond snapped. Pain erupted, a stabbing, metallic sensation across his chest. He dropped to one knee. Claws half-surfaced as he scraped the stone floor, biting down hard enough to taste blood. Frustration. Failure. The wolf's voice was absolute. Find her. The room vibrated. The prophecy's tremor twisted the air, pulled at him, broke through the walls of control he had spent years maintaining. For the first time in years, Damien couldn't contain the wolf. Panic and helplessness wove together, a raw, inescapable force threatening to tear him apart. Leora moved swiftly through the shadowed halls. The Alpha's collapse gave her cover. She headed straight for the archive. Unlocked the door. Powered on the ancient tablet. Her hands trembled, but her movements were precise. The screen blinked warning after warning. Files deleted, others encrypted. Sabotage. Her father's name appeared among the restricted folders. Only one file remained intact. Almost as if it wanted her attention. She opened it. Scrolled through flickering, corrupted data. Cold dread replaced determination as she recognized the symbols. Stamped with the Luna Oracle's mark. Illegal magic. Intertwined with her father's name. The tablet pulsed faintly. Her scar tingled in response, a subtle echo of the prophecy stirring awake. Beside the tablet lay her childhood notebook. She picked it up, compared her old drawings to the symbols on the screen. Recognition struck, sharp and brutal. She had been reproducing them, unconsciously, for years. The tablet glitched violently as she zoomed in on a single symbol. Her scar burned beneath her skin. "This was in my mind before I ever saw it," she whispered. The archive plunged into darkness. The tablet shut down. The truth physically closed off. The main security monitor gave a low pop and died. Ryder tapped it. All 12 screens flickered, then collapsed into static. The compound's perimeter dissolved into white noise. Frustration cooled into suspicion. The Elder's silence pressed down on him, demanding answers he couldn't give. Internally, he knew Leora was innocent. The time-stamped logs confirmed it. Every camera failed the exact moment the last prophecy tremor shook the territory. An Elder's whisper cut through the static. She timed it. Ryder ignored the screens, focused instead on the heavy folder in his hand. He passed it to Elder Thane. Thane slammed it onto the console. Every pointed question reinforced the lie being built against her. Ryder felt his loyalty split, truth on one side, orders on the other. "Shadow her, starting now." Thane's command was sharp. Ryder nodded stiffly, every muscle resisting. The duty felt like betrayal. He knew the Elders meant to use him as leverage against her. The archive door opened. Leora stepped into the room. Every Elder's gaze locked onto her, cold, accusing. Thane spoke immediately. He claimed she had wiped the cameras. Fear surged in her chest. Defensiveness followed close behind. The screens looped carefully selected footage of her recent movements, framed, controlled. Ryder refused to meet her eyes. The isolation deepened. Then Damien appeared in the doorway. The Elder's stares shifted, accusation softening into wary deference. Relief rippled through Leora even as tension stayed coiled tight. He couldn't openly defend her. He avoided her gaze, suppressing the bond between them. Thane renewed his accusations. Damien said nothing, but his jaw tightened, a subtle, visible fracture of control. The faint scent of pine and leather from his jacket grounded her. Damien sat rigidly on the examination bed, eyes fixed on the wall. Leora moved closer, cautiously. She lifted gauze to clean the cut on his forearm. He flinched, but didn't pull away. The brief touch sent pulses of tension between them. Wolf-driven, unspoken. Their breathing synced, unconsciously. A silent, charged exchange. Damien's fingers twitched near her waist, frozen by restraint. His warmth brushed her cheek. Then, the connection snapped. He stood abruptly. The chair screeched across the floor. Longing collapsed into sharp, controlled withdrawal. She saw his hands trembling, the restrained quiver running through his arms. She heard the raw whisper, "You shouldn't touch me." The metal tang of adrenaline filled her mouth. Damien turned away sharply, left behind the warmth, the safety of her proximity. The thin membrane of his control tore apart. He gripped the metal doorframe, steel dented beneath his fingers, knuckles white. Desire and frustration coiled together, barely restrained. The evidence of his instability sat exposed in the sterile corridor, visible to any passing Elder. He couldn't stay. If he did, the wolf would claim her violently. He whispered her name. A single drop of sweat fell. The lights flickered around him. Chapter 17, Manipulation and Blood. Marcus stepped closer, closing the last bit of space between them. His hand cupped her elbow, guiding her along the courtyard path. His thumb brushed the bare skin just below her sleeve. The touch was light, but it felt heavy, intrusive, almost suffocating. Leora's tight, confused tension shifted at once, compressing into pressure. Inside her, conflict flared. She wanted to pull away. Yet his soothing, familiar voice pushed against her instincts. "You always overthink," he said. His voice was too soft, too knowing, as if he'd been inside her thoughts hours ago. A cold wind swept across her exposed arm, goosebumps rose where his fingers rested. Her gut screamed danger, primal, hot. But her mind pushed back. She told herself she was overreacting, imagining threat in a friend's comforting gesture. Then a sharp neurological stab hit behind her skull. Precise, cold. Marcus's eyes flickered with irritation just for a moment, then the mask slid back into place. Calm, controlling. A shadow shifted across the portico. Leora stiffened. Damien stepped out of the darkness. Coiled, ready. Every muscle drawn tight like a bowstring. Relief flooded her lungs, then immediately tightened. Marcus's tension filled the space. Her body reacted to Damien's presence before her mind caught up. Protection, safety. Damien's pupils widened. He sensed her distress. He read Marcus as a threat. Marcus's thin, practiced smile tightened. Territorial. He shifted his weight subtly. The wind rattled leaves against stone. The silence sharpened. Marcus stepped directly between them. His hand hovered near her back, a quiet claim of space. The relief she'd felt vanished. In its place, the sharp clash of dominance. Helping her through a memory flare, Marcus said smoothly. He dismissed the jagged, raw pain she had just endured. Damien's jaw twitched. He recognized the lie instantly. A cold gust rattled the courtyard lanterns. The moment stood stark and exposed. Her gaze drifted to the courtyard wall, a carved wolf symbol. Ancient, primal, not the pack crest. The sight struck her hard. Agony exploded behind her eyes. She froze, breath locked in her chest. Instinct screamed to flee. Logic trapped her in place. A child's scream echoed in her memory. Brittle, distant. Ringing surged in her ears. She tried to gasp. Her throat refused. Marcus's grip snapped around her wrist at the exact peak of pain. His fingers closed tight where her pulse thrashed. Terror curdled. Violation set in. The metallic ache behind her eyes deepened. His timing was too perfect. He knew the precise moment her guard would break. Then came a low, guttural snarl, cutting through the courtyard. Damien's warning. The heat of Marcus's fingers stood in sharp contrast to the cold sweat slicking her skin. Before she could react, a rogue burst through the hedges. Mud and muscle exploded into the courtyard. Leora's panic sharpened into survival focus. Her knees went weak. Her breath caught. She stumbled backwards, straight into Marcus's rigid grip. The rogue's flank flashed into view, branded with the same archaic wolf symbol she had just reacted to. The scent of blood hit her a split second before impact. Marcus moved, not to shield her, to shove her aside. Protecting only himself. Leora slammed into the ground. Betrayal surged through her, sharp and immediate. The truth landed hard. His first instinct was self-preservation. Damien intercepted the rogue midair. The collision thundered across the stone courtyard. Leora scraped her palms raw as she scrambled to regain her footing. She lunged without thinking. Her hand closed around Damien's arm, fingers locking onto the taut muscle of his bicep. The jolt ripped the air from her lungs. Bond pain flared instantly. Romantic, supernatural, indivisible. The scar along her clavicle pulsed with faint heat. A mirrored sensation burned beneath his skin. Damien froze, unnaturally still. His breath turned ragged, shaking. Carefully, deliberately, Damien eased his arm free. He didn't look at her. He shrugged off his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. Warmth closed in. The scent of pine and damp earth grounded her. The trembling in her limbs slowed. Marcus watched. Unmoving, unreadable. The jacket settled around Leora like an anchor. Even wrapped in Damien's warmth, unease lingered. She touched her scar and winced. The phantom ache behind her eyes sharpened, precise, deliberate, a memory-linked pain demanding answers. "Why did that symbol hurt?" she whispered. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. Damien stiffened. His eyes closed, just briefly. The air around him turned cold. Heavy with guilt, he couldn't speak. When he answered, his voice was raw, low, fogging in the chilled air. "Leora." A pause. "I can't tell you." He turned away. His fist slammed into the metal gatepost. Steel groaned under the impact. The shift was brutal, from shared vulnerability to sudden abandonment. Now the conflict was purely relational. His desperate need to distance himself. Her desperate need for truth. The force of his strike warped the metal. It cried beneath his hand as he pulled back. Leora watched him go. Realization hardened in her chest. He was hiding something. Something about the night that still haunted her. Chapter 19, The Prophecy Breathes. Leora froze in the corridor as a whisper brushed her ear. So faint it could have been imagined, yet clear enough to make her blood run cold. Unease tightened in her chest, coiling into something heavier. Darker. She wanted answers. She needed them. But beneath that hunger lay a quiet fear of what those answers might demand. The whisper spoke her name. Layered. Stretched, as if two voices echoed across overlapping realities. Ahead, a sigil carved into the stone floor pulsed with a thin white glow. Cold air curled around her ankles. Sharp, sudden. Cutting through the corridor's stale breath. Before she could move closer, Damien caught her wrist. Heat surged through her at the contact. A jolt so intimate it stole her breath. His eyes widened with something close to panic, and he released her as if burned. "Not here," he whispered, strained, urgent. "Not when it's waking." The sigil flared again, responding unmistakably to her presence. His breath grazed her cheek, warm, unsteady, a fragile anchor in the echoing cold. Her fingers closed around the pendant at her throat. It pulsed with heat. Then it glowed. A symbol surfaced in the light, one she had never seen before. Fear iced her spine. Stone groaned as the chamber behind them sealed shut. The vibration rattled through her bones. Damien stared at the glowing mark on her chest, horror carving his features. "Leora," he said softly. Dread threaded through the word. That mark shouldn't exist anymore. The pendant throbbed against her sternum. Stubborn. Insistent. Whispers rose around them, swirling like unseen wind, swallowing the sound of grinding stone. Panic fractured her thoughts. She couldn't process the glow beneath her feet, the heat at her throat, the sudden rush of cold. The voices swelled and fell together, chanting a single word. Remember. The sigils beneath her feet shimmered, radiating heat like cooling lava. Dust lifted into the air, caught in invisible currents of magic. Damien seized her shoulders, trying to steady her amid the chaos. His hands trembled violently. "It's the bond," he rasped. "The chamber reacts to it, to us. It's forcing the memory." Pain flared beneath her ribs. Sharp. Burning. Her scar ignited, white-hot, snapping her fully into terrified awareness. "This isn't supposed to happen yet," Damien said. His voice cracked. The floor groaned as the sigils peeled upward, light tearing free of stone. Heat thundered through her body, echoing the glow at her feet. Then, the chamber vanished. Blinding white swallowed everything. Sound, ground, sense. Leora felt torn loose from herself, spun into weightless disorientation. She could no longer trust her body or her instincts. The light overwhelmed them all. Through the glare, a vision formed. A small child ran through a dark forest, shadows clawing at her heels. A scream sliced through Leora's mind, brittle, sharp, like glass shattering. Leaves rustled against her skin, and though she stood nowhere near a forest. Damien staggered beside her, gripping her hand as the white bled into darkness. The bond dragged him into the vision with her, relentless, unforgiving. "I've seen this forest before," he muttered distantly. His grip tightened. Desperate, the child turned. Recognition struck Leora like a blade. A symbol was carved into a nearby tree, the same swirling knot etched into her pendant. The light at her throat flared brighter, illuminating the dark bark. Wind whipped through her hair, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. The child called a name. It pulled at something buried deep inside her, something sealed away. Damien pulled her against his chest, his strength bracing her against the panic threatening to tear her apart. His heartbeat thundered beneath her cheek, frantic but grounding. "I know that forest," she whispered into his shirt. Their foreheads touched. Breath met breath in the suffocating stillness. Desire surged between them. Sudden, fierce, undeniable. Damien held her, but terror flickered openly across his face. His lips brushed hers, not a kiss, but something raw or unrestrained, before he tore himself away as if scorched. He slammed his fist into the stone wall. The sound echoed hollowly through the chamber as dust rained down. Anguish twisted his features, his breaths ragged, broken. The vision had drained him. The bond demanded more than he could give. When Leora's fingers brushed his arm, he flinched as if struck. She stepped in front of him, blocking his retreat. His pain sharpened her resolve. "Why?" she demanded. "Why does my scar react to you, to the symbols, to this prophecy?" Their breathing echoed loudly in the chamber. Damien squeezed his eyes shut. His jaw trembled. "I can't," he whispered. "I don't want to hurt you." The sigils behind them dimmed, sinking back into the floor as if retreating from the fragile tension between them. Leora's voice followed, small and wounded. "Then why does it feel like you already have?" Chapter 20. The night he saved me and damned me. Leora pressed her palm against the cold stone of the corridor, shoving herself slightly away from Damien, just as the forest vision slammed back into her mind. The sights and sounds came rushing in, twisting her confusion into a chilling dread. The child's scream echoed again, louder this time, vibrating in her bones like raw, unfiltered terror. Her scar seared, pulsing with deep, relentless heat, and the air around her shimmered as though the hallway itself were bending under the memory's weight. Damien's composure finally cracked. He lunged toward her, desperation sharpening his movements, catching her elbow as she stumbled and struggled against the vision. the dread clinging to her eased just a fraction at his presence. But the fragile trust it brought was immediately tangled with the intensity of the bond between them. His touch, meant to steady, only made the vision flare brighter behind her eyes. He whispered, his voice tight with warning, "Not again. Not here." Beneath her shirt, her pendant glowed white-hot, and the sharp, earthy scent of forest and smoke hit her like a jolt. Reality ripped with a sound like tearing fabric, and the cold stone corridor dissolved into the frantic dark greens of a nighttime forest. Leora's fragile trust shattered, replaced by pure terror. Trees bent inward in gnarled silhouettes against a sickly moon, pointing toward something hidden deep within the woods. A deafening roar of wind swept around her, though the corridor no longer existed. And then she saw it, a small figure darting between the trees. Damien froze. His body went rigid, and Leora felt the agony twisting his face before she understood its meaning. He knew this night. He had lived it in nightmares he clearly didn't want her to witness. He tried to pull her back, his hand shaking violently in hers, but the force of the vision held them fast. He could only gasp, strangled. No, not this. Blinking against the sensory overload, Leora noticed something that didn't fit her old memories. Glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, a wolf, not a man. Confusion replaced her agony. The massive, dark shape wasn't attacking the child, it was shielding her, tracking something else in the shadows. The warm fog of its breath brushed against the cold air. Leora gasped, barely able to speak. That's me. Driven by a sudden, fierce instinct, Leora knelt in the vision, reaching toward her terrified younger self. Vulnerability and a deep ache washed over her. The child clutched something glinting, her pendant, broken and bloodied. Just as Leora stretched her hand toward the child, a shadow moved behind the trees, impossibly fast and dark. Leaves crunched sharply beneath her knees, unnervingly real. Before she could reach the child, the shadow lunged with a blade. Horror slammed into her, freezing her in place. The cloaked figure wielded a knife etched with the same sigil she had glimpsed before. The metallic gleam filled her vision, and then Damien's wolf exploded into motion, not toward the attacker, but directly between the child and the blade. The dark, massive form scooped the child by the scruff and carried her clear of the strike. Relief crashed over Leora, immediate, overwhelming. Her mind rebelled against what she was seeing. The image of protective ferocity contradicted every piece of trauma she had believed. She watched herself, small, fragile, being carried to safety in the wolf's jaws. Her scar flared, white-hot, sinking her present pain with a long-buried, forgotten memory. The warmth of the wolf's breath touched the child's hair. Then a blinding flash erupted, swallowing both the wolf and the child. When the light faded, relief twisted into crushing devastation. The memory she had trusted, the one she thought she knew, had been overwritten. Static remnants lingered, fractured, incomplete. At the forest's hazy edge stood Marcus, unmoving, watching it all. The vision shattered like frozen glass, yanking them violently back into the cold corridor. Leora collapsed, her knees hitting stone, but Damien's arms caught her before she fell completely. Shock pressed down on her, hollow, too heavy for tears. Even as the forest vanished, the child's desperate scream lingered in her mind. A low rumble of thunder rolled outside the high windows. She clung to his coat, voice fragile. "You saved me." Damien jerked away as though burned, shoving himself upright and shaking his head. The hollow shock morphed into the sting of his own heartbreak. He didn't look at her, eyes fixed on the empty space where the forest had been. "I got there too late. I didn't stop the first blow," he admitted, words ripped from him, the sharp scent of rain sweeping through the corridor. Leora's breath trembled in the cold air. Before she could respond, the elders appeared at the far end of the corridor, rigid, unyielding. Their presence chilled her immediately, turning heartbreak into sharp fear. The echo of their footsteps was cold, judging. One elder spoke, voice firm as granite. "It's begun. The prophecy binds them." Another stepped forward, voice low, warning, "We can still sever it." Leora met Damien's eyes across the small space, but it felt impossibly vast. Her voice was thin, trembling under the weight of revelation and guilt. "It was you. You carried me." Relief and guilt collided violently. Damien staggered back as if struck, shock and pain raw in his expression. Thunder cracked outside, a perfect punctuation to the rift opening between them. Then a sound came, neither theirs, nor the elders, nor the storm. A whisper from the prophecy itself, resonating deep in Leora's chest. The chill ran straight through her, filling her with dread. Truth binds or destroys, it intoned. The air vibrated, raising gooseflesh. The bond between her and Damien flared sharply, painfully, as if something ancient and vital had chosen a path for them. Leora stumbled backward. Her spine hit the cold stone of the corridor. The elders were gone, but the air still thrummed with the prophecy's lingering warning. Damien stepped into the entryway, blocking any thought of escape. Her heart lurched at his presence, sharp, sudden, a mix of annoyance and unease. The bond between them coiled tightly, pressing into her gut, and he hadn't even touched her yet. The flickering light above buzzed faintly, adding to the disorienting tension. Her knees weakened before he made a move. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate, erasing the space between them. The air around her seemed to warp, bending like heat above a fire, pressing against her skin like a tangible sheet. Her chest constricted. Breaths came fast, shallow. She kept her gaze on the stone floor, refusing to meet his eyes. But the resistance did nothing to lessen the bond's pull. Around the edges of his dark silhouette, her vision blurred. The only sharp presence was the oppressive warmth radiating from him. Then his eyes flashed gold. The sudden transformation cut through the haze. Damien's jaw clenched tight, skin stretching over his cheekbones. A primal alarm surged through her. Instinctively, she knew this wasn't desire. It was the wolf struggling to contain itself. A low, guttural sound vibrated from his throat. Pure, wild distress. Leora tried to draw a steady breath, but the air tasted metallic, coppery, mingling with the raw fear stirring inside her. She recoiled, pressing her head back against the wall. It was sickening, like old blood or cheap metal. She couldn't tell if it was real or just another surge of the bond's unpredictable power. The taste lingered on her tongue. Wrong. Invasive. Damien lifted his hand, not touching her, but tracing a warm arc through the air beside her cheek. The draft feathered across her skin. The restraint in his movement struck her like a physical blow. His fingers trembled. She could feel his fear. Of the bond, of himself, of what he might become. She clamped her mouth shut, trying to anchor herself. But as her lungs expanded, they synced involuntarily with his. Each inhale, each exhale, matching his sharp, controlled rhythm. She lost all sense of separation. Her body was no longer hers alone. It moved as part of a dangerous, unsteady unity. She pressed her palm to the wall, seeking something solid. The stone should have been cool, steady. But under her fingertips, it thrummed faintly, an internal vibration mirroring the pressure in her chest. Terrified, disoriented, she yanked her hand back. Was it real, or just another distortion of the bond? Damien exhaled sharply, stepping back slightly, offering a brief glimpse of the corridor beyond. Relief flared bright, desperate, but fleeting. The bond reacted instantly. An invisible, crushing pulse pressed her toward him. She stumbled, unbalanced. Before she could reach the wall, his arm shot around her waist. One searing hand held her tight. The heat of his skin against hers detonated, a terrifying mix of desire and panic. She gasped against his shoulder, overwhelmed by the intensity. With her trapped against him, their momentum froze in precarious stillness. She lifted her head. Their foreheads met. The contact ignited a raw, burning yearning neither could deny. A silent argument waged between them. Sparks of heat flowed outward, merging from body to body. Without thinking, she tipped forward slightly. Her lips brushed his, fleeting. A single breath, one trembling instant. The touch, small as it was, shattered her restraint. Longing erupted into complete surrender. His breath caught against hers. A choked, desperate sound. The surge between them detonated. Pain and pleasure collided violently. The copper taste flooded her mouth, burning over the heat of their connection. His lips pressed rigidly against hers, teeth briefly brushing, eyes fully gold, feral. His claws half-formed at the hand on her waist, digging in as his wolf fought to take over. The kiss, driven by the bond and the surge of trauma, became a maelstrom of raw fear and instinct. Then, with a guttural wrench, Damien threw himself back, slamming into the opposite wall. The impact echoed the violent control he had fought to maintain. Leora's terror shifted to bewildered emptiness. The space where he had been felt like a physical void. The bond ached in response. He slid slightly down the stone, gold eyes still glimmering with feral energy, and whispered, "What did we just do?" Leora raised a trembling hand, instinctively wiping her lips to rid herself of the metallic taste. Her fingers froze at the faint, cold tingling lingering there. A dark, oxidized smear stained them. She scraped it lightly against her thumb. Copper again, not blood, but something wrong, something unnatural. She looked toward Damien, pressed against the far wall, and whispered, barely audible, "What's happening to us?"